Hey guys, now I know what you're thinking. Why is this Death Battle obsessed nerd making something not even related to the show? Well, I like other things too, you know. I've watched some anime, been to the theater, and spent hours upon hours watching cartoons, but one of the forerunners of my entertainment, if not the forerunner, is video games. There are so many beautiful, hilarious, and just amazing moments I've had sitting in front of a TV over the years, frantically moving a little joystick as I tried to be my dad in Galaga, or my brother in Super Smash Bros., who literally spikes exclusively in his strategy, or to beat games solo, like stuff on my consoles over the years that my dad's found at yard sales, gotten from here, etc., like a Wii U, PlayStation, and recently, a Nintendo Switch. Last year for Christmas, I got a present I had been curious about for a while, that being a little old game called Shovel Knight. Now, I don't really know about games other than the big ones, like the popular ones, unless I get it recommended or something, but I had heard about this one multiple times. There was obviously Shovel Knight's own fight with Scrooge McDuck I went back and saw after I got into Death Battle, but also various lists over the years that praised the game for being an indie titan and one of the best in the industry. So, I had always wanted to play it, but my Wii U and my only means of doing so was broken at this point. To my surprise, I got the Treasure Trove edition of the game, physical copy for the Switch. That includes the original 4 games, Shovel of Hope, Plague of Shadows, Spectre of Torment, and King of Cards, along with a few other bells and whistles. Needless to say, I loved it all. Each game had something unique with it drew me in and kept it that way, in their own fashion. Shovel Knight forced me to think outside the box of my powers and watch my step. Plague Knight taught me to manage my resources and mix it up to beat back each boss. Spectre Knight had a fantastic story and protagonist, along with mind-boggling levels of difficulty. And King Knight was a different game almost entirely, and so was that interesting card game Joustus. Fun times, meadows, etc. I'm probably ranting at this point, but I just love Shovel Knight. All of the music, platforming, humor, storylines, difficulty, and so much more make it pretty much impossible not to. And you know what they say, you should do what you love. New video time! The Shovel Knight games have pretty good stories, even at the worst, and 2 games stand above the rest. Plague of Shadows, starring Plague Knight, and Spectre of Torment, starring Spectre Knight. Today the focus will be on Plague Knight, or more accurately, the essence of Plague Knight. Spoilers ahead for his game and the other 3. In Plague of Shadows, we follow the short but smart alchemist known as Plague Knight and his journey to craft the ultimate potion with his partner in crime, Mona. They go across the land to steal the very essence of their evil co-workers, the Order of No Quarter, and the evil Enchantress commanding them all. While never really explained, in essence, is what each knight and boss you face embodies to a certain degree. Think of it as their core emotion or desire simplified as their whole self, their essence. Surprisingly, we don't really hear what each knight's essence is, which got me confused and intrigued. This video is going to be my guess on the essence of each knight, the 4 protagonists, and the Enchantress. I'm Round15 and I'm here to figure out what is Plague Knight's essence. First up, let's talk about the people that are the easiest to figure out, like the final boss, the Enchantress. If it wasn't clear enough, I'm pretty sure she's the essence of evil. Yeah, the final boss choice has to be evil, I hear you saying. It's a give in. And yeah, it kinda is. She shares many negative traits other knights have, like greed and an aura of superiority, along with believing she is above all others. Because, yeah, she's evil. However, unlike the others, she is a balanced mix of the negative emotions instead of just embodying one, and all she really does is just be evil, conquer, and bend people to her will. Not much to say. Except maybe she's a dominatrix, but I don't know. Almost forgot her, despite the connection to the Enchantress, but let's talk about our blue buddy's partner in battle, Shield Knight. For her core emotion / essence, I'm inclined to believe it is most likely joy. For starters, in Shovel Knight Dig, the first time we really see her casual conversations with Shovel Knight, it's mostly her finding happiness in what they are doing, joking or making him laugh, or reminiscing over their past together in a jovial manner. Practically all of her time in the game has her smiling, being happy with events should they go in her favor, and this carries over to the end of Shovel of Hope, where she is freed from the Enchantress by Shovel Knight. Even in this final battle where both are tired and unsure of victory over this great foe, she manages to put a smile on her face, happy that her partner had caught her in the first place, and she keeps that smile. Her final thoughts happy as Black Knight and Shovel Knight escape, leaving her to hold off the Enchantress, sacrificing her life. As such, yeah, I think it's happiness. And Shield Knight ain't the only one happy that she found her way back to Shovel Knight at the end of their adventure. Because let's be real, all of us ship it. Don't even lie. Next is the greedy and money-grabbing Treasure Knight, who is obviously greed, or more accurately, avarice. We see him have no motivation other than money, which is why he joined the Order in the first place, to get big bucks. His literal boss fight is also in a giant sub of his filled with treasure. Oh, also, he seems to want to be surrounded by nothing but wealth, throwing everybody else who is quote-unquote filth overboard. Even if this didn't happen, Plague Knight outright states he's the essence of avarice after the boss fight, so yeah. Third is the tiny tyke with the tech of a titan, Tinker Knight. His essence is implied to be related to his brain by Plague Knight and Tinker himself via the statement, "I do so enjoy your craft." So I think the best route is intelligence, and it shouldn't be anything related to evil because he never really does stuff out of malice, and he turns good at the end without a problem. His reasoning for joining the Enchantress was quote-unquote fixing the valley, and he uses these types of metaphors frequently, always revolving around his craft or building things, which all of them are heavily related to his intelligence. Of course, it could be related to working and or hard work, but another knight embodies that trait far more than Tinker does, that I will discuss later. Right up next is Polar Knight, the grim golem in the frozen mountains. He's a strange case because while other knights just ooze their emotion, he doesn't say much, and when he does, it's pretty bland and just straightforward. So we have to look into what he says. He was admitted / asked into the order by Spectre Knight because of a reputation he had built as a powerful and strong knight, and semi-bribed with the promises of great battles along the way. Whenever he talks down to people, or insults them like most of the bosses do, it's usually by calling them things like weaklings like Plague Knight, who uses bombs and tricks rather than his own strength due to his diminutive stature. When he brags or tries to talk Shovel Knight into joining the Order, it's because the Order is strong, nay, the strongest. You see where I'm going with this. Polar Knight should be the essence of strength. Halfway through the Order is Mole Knight, the best digger around, well, besides Shovel Knight, of course. He's not exactly evil, just doing whatever job he's hired for without a complaint. He's kind of obsessed with his work in that regard, though not to an outright malicious degree. He shows no hostility to Spectre Knight when he comes to recruit him, only talking about finishing his current job, which Spectre is halting, and that's why they're fighting. He's also extremely punctual and says the service is too slow because of that, aka he can't get enough of his work done up there. Strangely enough, he's also nice to his co-workers, as in the other members of the Order of No Quarter are not exactly cordial with their minions, so to speak, but he is nice enough to schedule them actual break times and give them a giant hot tub, which he goes in there with them to spend breaks in, no less. After the Enchantress is defeated, he will also work with the villagers to gain more treasure with no ill will, just looking to his next job. His core character is heavily associated with working hard, and because of that, I think the best choice is Perseverance. His main way of doing things is to just bulldoze through as efficiently as he can, and always finish what he sets out to do, never going back on his word. His boss fight also has him literally rush through the walls, never giving an inch. His entire reasoning for fighting King Knight is because he was halting the work progress and hindering his efforts, aka his work. Workaholic at its finest. The final knight of the order, besides the main four and the primary focus of the video, is Propeller Knight, and his is pretty easy to find out if you know his character and to play the games. That being, I think he is the essence of beauty. Most of what he does revolves around his style and flash, and being a flamboyant, free-spirited bird with no regulations or competition, only carefree desires. He drinks only the best and finest juice on the land, is a lazy man, and an important object for him is the True Love's Rose, which was so meaningful in his eyes as he attacked King Knight's airship out of nowhere just to get it back. And his rival Cooper, who should know his desires and the like, willingly returns it because he knows how special it is to him. That also doesn't really happen with these kinds of things, so it's fairly obvious that the object of love is highly important to him. His motivations also tie into that and the beauty in it, and he even lets Plague Knight have dinner with Mona later on his ship, acting as the butler for it. If that's not dedication and being a bro among bros, I don't know what is. When Plague Knight talks with him before their fight, Propeller Knight even implies it has something to do with his quote-unquote suave, daring nature. As such, he's a romantic inside and out, and hey, romance is a beautiful thing after all. Now let's move on to the main four knights. Shovel Knight, being the protagonist, should kick things off. He, being the main hero, could be a lot of things. He never really shows fear, so it could be bravery. He always shows honor when fighting and helped the order up after they fell from the room they fought in, so it could be honor, the list goes on. But when looking at his actions overall, the best choice and the most likely should be Hope. Shovel Knight's greatest aspect is that he never gives up in his adventures, and his weapon is kind of symbolic of this. With it, he keeps pushing and shoveling and never giving an inch with all of his might until the task is done. This is because he never gives up, and he never gives in, and he never stops hoping that things will be better. Sure, he did retire for a time after he believed the love of his life, Shield Knight, quote-unquote, died, but he never gave up hope she was still alive. He says this himself. And the instant he finds out about the Tower of Fate being open now, where he lost her, he went straight back there to save her, with his dreams at night being of nothing but saving her and hoping he can. What's more, whenever he has to fight somebody not from the Order, he always tries to find a peaceful way to resolve it because he hopes for the best, even in a simple scuffle. When he finally rescues Shield Knight, he says what pushed him all along was the hope that she was still alive. Oh, and the game is literally called Shovel of Hope. So... Next is King Knight, and he's a bit of an odd candidate. He's obsessed with gold, but he can't be avarice because Treasure Knight exists. He's definitely not other traits to line up with the other knights, so what can he be? Well, to find this out, let's look at the one thing King Knight's entire character revolves around. Arrogance. He not only claims he is a king well before he officially becomes one, trying to induce an air of superiority because of it, but he is no stranger to simply insulting people he really shouldn't talk down to from obvious details, like the brooding Spectre Knight, or King Troupple, who is pretty much a god in the verse. Despite being given multiple chances in that scenario to apologize, he still ran headfirst into every challenge or person without caring for how his actions would turn out. This is no more obvious than his literal main attack, a shoulder bash. His signature move is him plowing through all of his problems without care for how things will turn out, and that trait has led to his downfall in more ways than one. What's more, whenever he has something truly good, like the relationship with his mother, or a masterpiece of a painting, he keeps pushing for more and more and more, even though that eventually ended with his mother leaving after he had gone too far. Even after that, he drowned it out with him being a king and the quote-unquote duties of one. And hey, pride comes before a fall, which is fitting, because Shovel Knight brought just that to him on a golden platter, fit for a king. Next to last is probably my favorite character in the entirety of the series, Spectre Knight. His game slaps, it's actually really difficult, his powers are the most fun to use, the atmosphere is eerie and epic, his character development is utter flames, etc. This also gives a clear idea of what his essence is, because almost all of his actions stem from one core aspect: rage. First in the timeline, the second Shield Knight, who he hates because she's a knight, because the whole knives versus thief aspect he's embodying, tried to interfere with its quest. He got so blinded by rage he ended up killing his best friend, practically brother at this point, of many years right in front of him. Then, even when his life gets saved by the evil Enchantress, he utterly hates being her servant, acting rebellious whenever he can in defiance and taking the opportunity to betray her if possible, which he did when he learned her true identity of Shield Knight. After that, he got so face-meltingly angry, he challenged her directly and carved a path to her that sent his old friend Black Knight Steed Terrapin off a tower, wherever they fought. And whenever you fight him in-game, he's almost always jabbing you like some angry Redditor trying to expose you. A lot of his anger is probably directed at himself for basically making his entire life like this in the first place, and that rage is probably why he's such a threat and a boss in verse. Time for the final knight and the object of this entire video, Plague Knight. Unlike most people in this game, he is not really a villain, but at the same time, he ain't really a hero either. He may work in the Order, but he doesn't really do anything evil per se. His hideout, the Explodatorium, is basically a big laboratory that he works on with his projects, and all the minions there are pretty much employees. As far as we know, he doesn't really do anything bad per se for the Enchantress besides blowing up Justice cards, but that's not really a felony or anything. The logic for the Enchantress wanting him in the first place through Spectre Knight is that she wanted the best alchemists in the lands, and nothing else really. On the other side, he has ventured into multiple areas and taken them over, often beating down several knights to do it. Granted, the first time was because Percy shot him there like an idiot, but he still did those things in the first place. He's more like a chaotic neutral than anything else, just going by his own goals and rules while having a sense of morality in his actions, but doing anything necessary to get his aspirations. For example, he never really kills anybody, weirdly enough. He spared the knights in the museum despite them attacking him first, and the traveling warriors, who he fought, were always just beaten and nothing else. He even tries to avoid fights in some cases, and despite him winning those, he laughs and raises jokes, apparently takes Baz on as an employee, and doesn't try to kill Shovel Knight when he literally walks into his camp and steals part of his soul. This level of kindness is made even more evident when he fights Tinker Knight. Both of them are brilliant scientists of a sort, often ridiculed for these interests, and it seems like Plague shares a sort of kinship with him, outright telling him if he gives up his essence willingly, they won't have to fight and he won't be harmed. There's really no need to do that, but he does anyway because he appreciates his craft. Still, him not really being a hero eliminates a lot of emotions that could be had, like heroism or honor, but not being a villain and the fact that a lot of other traits are already taken leave him with very little. So let's look at another character and his primary reason for his adventure, Mona. For those who have not played Shovel Knight Plague of Shadows, spoilers ahoy. Mona is Plague Knight's partner in crime and alchemy, with intelligence and skill in the craft to match, which is important because of what exactly alchemy is. Despite magic and walking, talking animals running around, alchemy is hated and feared across the valley. This causes practitioners of it to hide their craft, and villagers who know of them anyway to pelt alchemists in stone. Plague Knight isn't even allowed entrance into the Shovel Knight game hub because of this, and is insulted by multiple knights in those battles I mentioned earlier. This clearly takes a toll on Plague Knight, who always wears a mask figuratively and literally to cover his true feelings and desires, while joking about to hide his sadness and the anger he feels of the world for hating him. However, Mona doesn't do that. While we don't know when she met him, it's clear the two were very close at the beginning of the game, with them being the closest thing to a true friend and equal the other had. They always shared the same interests and goals, and this was a new experience for both in more ways than one. This adventure led to both Mona and Plague Knight falling in love with each other, and the game's plot as a whole. Plague Knight seeks to craft the ultimate potion with the power of the essence of each person discussed on the list, which will grant him the ultimate power and means to have whatever wish he wants granted. We aren't given a reason why he wants this power until Plague Knight fights Black Knight a third time outside the Tower of Fate. In a surprisingly open moment between the two, Plague Knight revealed his reasoning for trying to make the potion is simply, he believes having such a power as an alchemist will let him be good enough to tell Mona how he feels about her. Due to his past, he could not accept somebody, much less someone like Mona, could love him for who he was, and instead went on the entire quest just for a chance at believing that he could earn her desires and love. He quite literally fought the entire valley and its most skilled warriors to try and earn that love. And Black Knight would ironically understand this more than anybody else, considering he shares unrequited feelings for Shield Knight. Black Knight tried to tell him Mona already shares his feelings because, he could pick up on these things. But Plague Knight could not accept that and move on to battle the Enchantress. If it wasn't clear from all of this, Plague Knight is a bit of an oddball when it comes to figuring out the desires of both himself and others, and this is the same for his core emotion, because I believe he is the essence of love. Yeah, cheesy, I know, but look at what exactly he does in the game. He goes to betray the Order in order to defeat each knight, despite some of them even being him before, and being very well capable of ending his life, including the Enchantress, who is stronger than all of them put together, all to craft one potion so he can have one chance to earn Mona's love in his eyes. He quite literally dances with death on a constant basis from both his friends and his foes, just for the infinitesimal chance that she will love him back. He also does several things relating to his feelings of her that aren't necessary, such as venturing into the swamp to find the fish god thing, King Trowel, just for lessons on dance and song after finding out Mona likes to dance. Trowel is pretty understanding on this and actually teaches him how to dance, so Plague Knight can even practice this on his own because obvious reasons. He even listens to multiple attempts at romantic advice from his lackey Percy, who he doesn't really admire intelligence-wise, but he still actually listens to those words and ponders if they will actually work. This sort of will is what drives him on his quest in the first place, and at its end, he's happy. Unbeknownst to him, because he's kind of oblivious to these sorts of things, Mona shared his feelings as well. She flirted with him several times, got openly annoyed and jealous when she is under the impression that he loves somebody else. It's a long story. And she shows genuine concern for his well-being, whether by asking whether he's physically ailed by water or ice depending on gameplay and levels you play, or his very life, going so far as to beg Black Knight to help / stop him so he will not be harmed, despite the temptation of the ultimate potion. Much later, after Plague Knight beats the Enchantress and makes the ultimate potion, Black Knight brings Mona, who finally tells Plague Knight how she feels, and frankly, blows his mind. After the final fight, Plague Knight has the ultimate potions in his hands. Ultimate power, and anything he could ever want or need, but he doesn't use it. To Mona's shock and latter awe, because in his own words, he already had everything he could ever want. Leaving the tower and blowing it up with a potion, Plague Knight and Mona finally revealed how they felt to each other, and after, Plague Knight seems to have retired from any form of villainy entirely, and he becomes a better person because of it. He began helping in experiments with Tinker Knight and Mole Knight to improve their own projects, became an official knight courtesy of King Privor, began teaching new classes in alchemy and fixing a lot of his altered minions, and even giving his Explodatorium to Percy. If you played the game, you'll know how important all this is. All Plague Knight really wanted was Mona's love, and when he finally received it, that was enough. So, as he dances the night away with his love at his side, finally happy and finally confident in himself, there can be no doubt that Plague Knight is the essence of love. So, that's the video. Hope you enjoyed this and tell me if there's any kind of video of this nature that you would like to see from me. Be sure to give me some ideas in the comments below, and maybe in the future I'd make a video out of it. Who knows? Anyway, see you guys next time, and go play Shovel Knight. It's the best game franchise ever. See you next time.